Not everybody is meant to be a lawyer, a doctor, all of these things. Their passions lie elsewhere. And I think that we have a duty to get in and teach them and show them what those options look like so they know and understand that what they have to bring to the table and what their skill set is still very valuable and necessary.
Welcome to Machine Shop Tech Talk. Today we're talking about kids. Kids these days. Today I'm here with my friend Shannon, and we're going to be talking about early interventions in youth and a way we can really make a difference for all the children without excluding them.
Yes, Arthur, thank you so much. We've spoken a lot about early intervention and what that looks like to give a voice to the youth. I'm extremely passionate about this in particular, being that my father was raised where I'm from, the west side of the tracks, is a less desirable area. He was raised there with 7 brothers and sisters and had dyslexia. And I'm a firm belief that he may not have made some of the choices that he made throughout his life had he have realized or been led to his voice a lot younger. The resources weren't there, be that at home, be that at school, so on and so forth. But I do believe that that would have looked different had more time have been spent at school with early intervention.
Yeah, well, and it's something that if you're not aware, you may not even think about, that there might be a child that's struggling with dyslexia, but they're still super smart. But when it comes to written word or other things that are getting in the way, maybe the home life at home, maybe it's not as good as we get to experience. Maybe there's a lot of different things. So for the people listening, I hope you pay attention, to bring some more awareness there and maybe share this out with other people that are working with youth to help shift their perspective as well. I know this has inspired you to take some actions locally in your own neighborhood that others might be able to bring into their neighborhoods, because this is going out worldwide, but usually it's North America and audience. With everything with your father, what has that inspired you to do for your local community?
Yes, absolutely. So I spent many years volunteering at juvenile hall. And it was enlightening. And the goal there was to give back what I was given and invest in a way that wasn't invested in my own father. When we look at the population, be that lawyers and doctors, is less than 1% of the overall population. But we tend to have this view that that's where children should go. And education, formal education, is not the route for everyone. And I say that to say in juvenile hall, I saw that there are learning disabilities, home disadvantages, less the formal education, if you will. And so with that said, getting in there early and teaching these children their voice. What do their strengths look like? Teaching them that it's okay to ask for help. Oftentimes what I would hear from these children, their safe space was at school. And so once they left school because of decisions they made, going into the system, a system that wasn't necessarily and isn't necessarily a voice for them. And so me being present was my own goal, if that was only teaching one child how to read. And in fact, that did happen. We had a 10-year-old, could not read, and my thought was, how is this individual ever going to read a job application, contribute to society, pay taxes, whatever have you? And there is always a means to an end, but how is he going to get there without having the proper skills? So again, it goes back to investing very early on. Not everybody is meant to be a lawyer, a doctor, all of these things. Their passions lie elsewhere. And I think that we have a duty to get in and teach them and show them what those options look like so they know and understand that what they have to bring to the table and what their skill set is, although it may not be what we formally look at, is still very valuable and necessary.
I love that you saw the pains, or you heard from your father, growing up, the different obstacles, and you took that opportunity. I'll do my best not to cry during this episode, but no promises. I'm glad we connected to talk about this, but there's something, and it's something that I think is really relevant, is if you judge a fish by the way he climbs a tree, you're always going to think that fish is a failure. And when you're talking about the different career paths that we are currently pushing a lot of our children to, we're asking a lot of fish to climb trees, and then we're yelling at the fish, calling it stupid because it can't climb a tree, right? Like monkeys can climb trees. That's great. They're lawyers and doctors and nurses, and these are all very important career paths for society, for the wellness of the population. It's not like I'm saying that they're not, but there's a whole bunch of people out there that can find a lot of joy in what manufacturing has to offer. It's more hands-on, it's more technical skill, it's a little more artistic, some say. I really like that view personally. So I love that you've been taking stuff like that. When you first got involved, I know obviously the inspiration was your father, but was it hard to get involved working with people down at the juvenile detention center, or what did that look like?
Hard, I wouldn't say hard. Yes, there's
Okay.
paperwork, there's background. They did want to know about my family history, and some questions
Yeah.
came from that once they did some background. And there were some questions that I had to answer about that. So I don't want to say hard. I don't want to diminish it by saying hard. It wasn't hard, but it's absolutely a process, yes. One of the most eye-opening experiences was I wanted to spend more time. I wanted to give more time as I saw the things I saw with these children being challenged and needs unmet. And that's by sheer volume. I understand that in an incarcerated environment, that there are limitations. So I wanted to spend more time, and it was interesting that it was more challenging to ask for more time than it was to even enter the program. And that's what was
Oh,
disheartening
really?
for me, and also why I'm extremely passionate about how do we get this into the school level? How do we get into underrepresented communities to prevent the negative outcomes before we even get there? When I look at some of the programs that have been removed from schools, I struggle with that because I am of the belief, and I know for a fact, that oftentimes children feel safe at school. And so if we could intervene way before that, before we're even entering incarceration. But if we do, there's options there also. But school is oftentimes a safe space. So to your point, there is paperwork, there's all of that to be done. But I wouldn't say that it was challenging to get in. And I would implore anybody that has any interest, these children need all of the help, the support, the love, the pouring into that we have to give.
You kind of switched it up, not from hard, but there's a process to go through. There's going to be some questions to answer. But in the end, when you work through all of that, you were able to work with them. And I mean, if you're talking about the challenge of trying to get more time, I'm going to take a wild guess that it was a rewarding experience for you, because can you talk about like what the experience was like? You went through all the paperwork, you got to work with these children. Now you're in this position where you're asking for more time. So why ask for more time there?
There was a need. We had in the program that I was involved in, it was extremely limited to Sundays. And there was one child who both parents, one had passed and one was in prison and serving a life sentence. And this particular child struggled severely. And realizing at his age that he couldn't read, I felt a duty. The cards were stacked against him, if you will, right? Based on the lack of what he had in the home, some very challenging situations in the foster system. That, yes, it was very rewarding to ask for that extra time, to spend with him, to make sure that he could read. And more than anything else, watching him discover himself. I can do this. I'm not dumb. I've been told that I'm dumb. I've been told all of these negative and horrible things that were very discouraging, that were leading to a life of crime at a very young age. To really seeing that light go off in him and knowing that he was capable and that he was being given the tools little by little to make better decisions and to believe in himself. And that in itself was the reward, to see that light go off and that self-worth to increase little by little.
It's something that every human deserves the experience of. And so many young people get denied that experience of just knowing themselves as capable of something, right? Like, I'm very fortunate. My father spent like 7 years in prison before I was born. He came out, he cleaned up his stuff, he learned from it. But he also spoke very, very plainly about that people can make mistakes and there's redemption after those mistakes. Let's not lose track of talking about early interventions that would maybe make a difference for these children, right? Let's stop asking fish to climb trees. One of the programs, and I've discovered actually, one, there's people like Drew Crow out there that are doing a great job about advocating and traveling to different communities to speak to youth, to show them the different options they can try, which I love. There's also different communities now that are starting to go back to what they call, up here we called them, I don't know, you can tell me what they call them down there, but they're called vocational training institutes. So basically when my dad was still in school, they took him from, standard book learning on the path for doctors and lawyers and all that stuff. And they put him in a classroom setting where he learned carpentry, he learned body work for automotive, he learned to do all these things with his hands because the retention wasn't there. So do you have programs right now in your neighborhood we can shout out, or what would you even call that down there?
Vocational, I don't have any to shout out locally, but your
Okay.
vocational training, trade schools, depending where you're at, they may be called something a bit different. But
Yeah.
you speak to the heart of exactly the same with my dad having dyslexia. Formal education wasn't going to be the route, but rather than being called an idiot dumb, the village idiot was something that he was called often with dyslexia. With that early intervention, Arthur, and teaching people that there is another way versus formal education happens very young. Again, to encourage them to know what their options look like. They don't have a voice. Some don't even realize that carpentry, and that's exactly where my dad landed, was successful, a wild artist with wood, but not realizing that that was a strength had he have been taught that young that that was okay too.
It's so important to, I mean, even in our day-to-day lives, right? Like if you're listening to this and you have no desire to get involved with youth, but you're still hanging out for this conversation, you can do the same thing for the humans around you. Recognize them for the things they do well, acknowledge the things they do that you appreciate instead of focusing on all the nitpicking and negativity, because that's easy to find. But you can take that same thing to children, right? I do the same thing with my children, because recognizing people for what they can do instead of punishing them for what they're not is going to give you a completely different human being that you're interacting with. For the teachers out there, I struggle. Obviously, we can't solve it here. I mean, talking about it brings awareness to it. I wonder what it's going to take on like a national level or an international level in across North America between Canada and USA, and to actually spot those children that are maybe not performing academically, but helping them find whatever it is, right? In spite of their home, in spite of whatever circumstances they're dealing with outside of that safe space they call school. Do you have any ideas?
I do, I do. And you bring up Drew Crow. Oftentimes we relate with someone that has walked the walk. And I'm not saying it can only be that way. But maybe it's not just on the teachers. Maybe these are programs that we come in. DARE is a very well recognized against drugs. What if something was started to where, be it Drew, someone else goes into these schools, has the conversations about awareness, so that way we don't alienate these children. We don't say, what are their names? Who are they? Whether they're in different programs in school. I'm not sure what that all looks like.
Yeah.
And you just go and bring awareness, and you talk to everyone as a whole, and you start empowering them from a very young age. Maybe it starts even in kindergarten, and you're just bringing awareness to the trades, and you start empowering them young. So maybe it's a completely separate movement, and it's school assemblies, and that is a common theme that's threaded throughout their lives, so they're empowered young. So maybe it is outside of the teachers. Maybe it's a group of individuals that have been impacted
Yeah.
some way or another, and it resonates with these children and encourages them to reach in and say, hey, you know what? I have a propensity towards manufacturing, to be in the trades, and it encourages them to follow that path.
And I've been interviewing people like yourself that are passionate about being involved locally, because, I commented on one of Drew's posts this morning. I was like, dude, I caught myself. I was talking about it, but I wasn't taking the actions. I was talking the talk. I wasn't walking the walk. So I've started communication with local schools and local people to get more actions. So one, obviously this conversation might spark others to go get involved locally. It's really simple. It's being willing to have that conversation. I've had a lot of other guests. You can go check out other episodes that all give different examples, really simple ones that you can do in your spare time while you're working a 9 to 5 or an afternoon shift or an overnight, whatever shift you're working, because the world of manufacturing is wild with some of the shifts that we get to work. But I hope that the people listening, even one out there, takes a new action, because teachers have it hard too, right? They've got a full plate. It's not like we're saying teachers are bad people. I think they're amazing people that are doing really, really hard work without maybe some recognition themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely, especially given the challenges that are present today. Absolutely.
Yeah, and one thing I know we talked about before, and I can't believe, we're almost 20 minutes in, we haven't brought it up yet, but for the people listening, look, if you think children aren't interested in manufacturing, I'm going to beg you to think again. How many children out there in the studies want to be YouTube creators? They want to be TikTok stars. The key element here is these are children that are demanding and looking for ways to create and to bring things into existence. And the only avenue they currently are aware of is social media, because they haven't been exposed to another pathway that gives them the ability to create. Talk to your kids. If they love creating, maybe help them make things in physical space. Do you think that might work, Shannon?
Absolutely. Well said. Couldn't have said that better myself. It's sparking that hope. Hope is all they need. And making things. And a lot of kids, I believe, follow that. That's what they're subjected to. Social media is everywhere. It's a powerful tool, not to take anything away from it, but it's about them understanding what are their options. Most of them don't even understand what those options look like outside of TikTok, outside of social media, outside of these things. So we have a duty to empower. And if we only impact one life, we've made a difference.
I believe we're all born with the desire to create, whatever it might be. Don't ask me to draw pictures, but I can make you something out of metal.
I love it. And something that you hear me say often is we speak a lot about tolerance in the manufacturing space. What about tolerance for people? All of our journeys, past histories don't look the same, but I am of the full belief that that's where our growth, the skills gap will come, is by having tolerance for people that have walked different journeys, past, made different decisions.
I completely agree. And the important points, we really need to repeat them to help people actually hear them, because sometimes I'm guilty of it. You say something 2-3 times, I'm still like, huh? And then, that 4th, 5th time, oh. So you can sing it from the mountaintops. That'll be totally fine. Before we wrap up, Shannon, because I really love that as a finishing note, right? Go out, even today, recognize one person, thank them. Hey, thank you. I really appreciated that. Whatever it is, be specific. Maybe they open the door, maybe they put a dish in the sink, or they put it in the dishwasher. Whatever, pick something. It can be super, super small and simple. It's going to feel weird. Do it anyway. Do you have any requests for the people listening, or anything that you wanted to share before we sign off?
My request would be to be active, be intentional with your time. We're all here to coexist, and our youth are our biggest asset.
100%. I mean, they are quite literally the future that we're all relying on. Thank you so much, Shannon, for being here today. So grateful that we got to have this conversation. And to all of my machining friends out there, keep your spindles turning and earning.